What's happening, guys? We're at Pro-Dyno in Fort Mill, South Carolina. We've got our 2021 F-150 PowerBoost up on the lift. We're going to take a look underneath and see what is going on. Now, I will be the first to tell you I am not an expert at either electric or hybrid drives, but I will point out the things that I do know and do see that's different on this truck versus other F-150s. And keep in mind, it's a 2021 model, so some of these features might just be standard on 2021. But looking at the back, we'll just start at the back, go to the front. Very large integrated hitch like we've come to know with Ford. Very nicely integrated into the frame. And then we have this new kick down going around spare tire. Keep your spare tire from rubbing on your axle. For guys who maybe put a little bit bigger spare up there sometimes. That could be why Ford put that. We've got a nice exhaust system, heat shielded, protect it, protect the tire from the heated exhaust. 9 3/4 inch rear end, like we're used to seeing forever and ever on Fords. Got the vent going way up, see right there. So that should help with water fording. Parking brakes are now electric. And moving forward, a nice aluminum drive shaft. Good size fuel tank. Looks like it's metal, but it's not. That is just a heat shield on a plastic tank with another plastic sort of skid plate on the bottom. Speaking of on the bottom, here's your battery for your hybrid drive. This is the PowerBoost with the 7.2 kilowatt generator built into it, but that's the battery. It's not huge by electric vehicle standards, but it's pretty good size. It can't see it from either side really because of the frame tucked up in here, so really that's the only shot we can get of it. But it's buried in there. Nice die-cast aluminum housing. Looks good. Speaking of die-cast aluminum, we got more stuff here, made in Thailand. I'm guessing this is your electric drive controller or charger. I'm not sure which. But there's a lot of modules like this on this truck. Of course, you got your high voltage cables, always marked in orange. And here's something else that's unique. You got this chamber off the exhaust with coolant hoses running to it. And my guess is this is a heat exchanger to warm up the coolant going to your battery pack. So on cold days, it'll heat up the battery pack. On hot days, it can cool the battery pack. There's some valves tucked in on top of this thing to control whether it bypasses or goes through this heat exchanger, depending on the external temperatures and the temperatures demanded by the battery. That's your Borg-Warner transfer case here. It's the one that can be all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, four-low, all that good stuff. There's your label if you want a little bit further information. Moving forward, it's going to be kind of tough to see other stuff because we've got sound deadening material here that you would take down to service, and I really don't want to take this truck apart. Ford just loaned it to us. But we've got your Evap canister for evaporative emissions. Nice through welded boxed cross members in a box frame, just like we've come to be accustomed to with Ford since 2004. We got a joint on the exhaust here. We got resonators, mufflers, all kinds of stuff going on with the exhaust. But basically just we've got 4 cats now. We got one there on each side. Same thing over here. So instead of 2 cats, this thing now has 4 catalytic converters on it. There's your 10R80 transmission. Got a little piece of heat shielding around that. Heat shielding through here. Plastic transmission pan. And housed somewhere in that we can't really get a good look at. We've got some electric drive componentry too. Like I said, everything is packed very, very tightly on this. Got a nice 2-piston caliper. Aluminum knuckle, really nice looking aluminum knuckle, by the way. Stamped steel control arm, 2-piece welded together. That looks good. Steering stop integrated into it. and on the knuckle. Speaking of steering, here's the back of the electric power steering rack. Going forward, charge air cooler or intercooler, if you will. Got hot side, cold side. We have, I'm not sure what this heat exchanger is for, but looking at it, we've got what looks like high pressure hoses going to it. This could very well, and judging by this part of it, it looks like it's going to the HVAC system on it, which is tucked right up in there. See that sticker? That's the back of your HVAC system. If you look over here, man, this thing is packed tight. It's right there, right where I'm pointing, that silver piece. Instead of having a traditional AC compressor, this thing essentially has a mini split system like you would have on your house. It has an electric driven heat pump for your hot or cold air needs on the truck. I'm guessing this heat exchanger here is part of that system. We got a little bit of a view of the front cover, the dampener. There's your oil filter way up in there. It does have a little runoff tray for your waste oil coming out when you do change your oil. This truck is due for an oil change, by the way, which needs to happen soon. All kinds of plastic componentry here in the front. You've got a rubber band hanging that didn't get taken off during assembly. And it's your main coolant hose going to your radiator. Tucking back around, one thing that I did find interesting, sway bar is a little bit smaller than I'm used to seeing on these trucks. And I like these kickoffs, the frame here, for safety in case you were to get into a collision. This tire comes back, it hits this and kicks under the vehicle instead of coming and crushing up into your footwell, which would cause a bad day. Nobody likes that. But let's see if I can find it here on the front. What I'm going to tell. Right there we have a sensor on the suspension. So it's basically a ride height sensor, which I thought was kind of weird. We've got them on the back too, which they're easier to see back here, considering this thing does not have active suspension. Forgive that brief intermission from Dan running a GT350 with the Pro Charger on the dyno. More on that later. But we do have a suspension level sensor on the back that's easier to see back there.
It might have to do with the four-wheel drive system and articulation.
Paul says it could have something to do with the four-wheel drive system and the articulation on that, and since it is an automatic four-wheel drive, that's quite possible. So, and I mean it shifts automatically if you have it in four-wheel A, as in all-wheel drive mode. Here you got the power cable running back here to the bed, going to your inverter plugs, so your 120 and 240 volt outlets. But man, there's a lot going on underneath this truck. And I looked up the curb weight, and I don't know how true it is, but it says this thing weighs 5,800 pounds. And seeing as how much stuff is packed in here, none of this stuff is lightweight. This, even though it's die-cast aluminum, this thing is going to have some heft to it. So does that battery. This is probably a pretty heavy vehicle. I mean, you got a lot of aluminum componentry, but you know, when you keep packing more and more stuff on these things, it's going to get heavier, and there is definitely a lot going on with this. Stick around, I'll show you under the hood next. So something else we did notice about this little heat exchanger here, have a valve in your exhaust system here to divert exhaust into this channel instead of going straight through. Like I said, depending on your heating or cooling needs of your battery. And looking back at this thing again, I think this is your coolant lines going to your battery. So if you need to cool your battery, it will divert some of the refrigerant from your basically mini split system this way, cool that coolant going to your battery. And if it's a cold day, you need to warm your battery up, it's going to mess with this valve, send exhaust this way, heat, cool it up, send that to your battery. So there's a lot of plumbing going on this truck. Just check out all of these coolant lines. That's all headed back to the battery from under the hood. So a lot going on there. All right, guys, now we've got a chance to look under the hood, and while there's a lot to see, there's also not a lot to see. So some things we've gotten used to. Massive air scoop going into this air box, which is a really good setup to get lots of clean, fresh air into this twin turbocharged 3.5 liter EcoBoost. And if you look way down there, you can see the turbo and the electronic wastegate actuator. Calls for 5W30 oil. Got this massive sound deadening cover on it, and the noise you're actually hearing is the air conditioning compressor and the fans drawing air through the condenser. But the engine is not running. It may kick on here in a minute though. Got a Egr Cooler Tube. It's buried in here behind this boost pipe. You can't really see it that well, but there is a little Egr cooler there. And then lots and lots of electronic modules. This thing actually looks like it's bolted to the battery tray, which is plastic. So you've got this fairly large electronics box. I'm guessing it's maybe like a DC to DC converter or something like that. But this thing has its own cooling system running to it. Right here is your coolant bottle or any of that. So this probably gets fairly warm at times if you're drawing a lot of current from the battery. And as you can see, the engine just kicked on, and it'll probably rev up to about 1500 RPMs to charge the batteries, and then it'll shut back off. But this thing's on a large metal bracket bolted to this plastic, and I have some questions how long this piece of plastic is going to be able to hold this. I mean, after years I could see it getting brittle, especially if this thing has a lot of heat in it, but we'll see. It's tough to tell. It may be mounted to the fender over here on the other side. It's just hard to see. But there is just a lot of stuff packed in here. You have to service this side of the engine, plan on pulling a lot of this off. You got your boost pipes running every which way, and lots of coolant hoses. Just a lot of stuff going on. I mean, it's hard to tell that that's a 60-degree V6. Usually that would look very small in this truck, but and there goes the engine back off. But with all of your hybrid and battery control boxes and all those modules, it just takes up a lot of space and it makes it look way more cluttered. Another thing's different, you do not have a traditional brake booster on this truck, because if the engine's not running, you're not getting vacuum. So Ford had to go with a different setup. But that's pretty well it for under the hood as far as what we can see. It goes along with what we just showed you a few minutes ago under the, while it's on the hoist and the whole undercarriage. But that's it, 3.5 liter high output EcoBoost, making a ton of power. I hope you guys enjoyed this look at the truck, and as always, head over to svtperformance.com for all the latest news, reviews, and information on your favorite Ford powered vehicles. And if you have any questions about this truck, post them in that link. It's in the description to the full article over on SVTP. I'm probably not going to have a chance to check YouTube comments, so any questions, post them on SVTP and we'll do our best to answer them. Thanks, guys.